Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Special Council meeting on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. We are now live on YouTube and we welcome all those attending in person and everyone tuning into the live stream. I'll start with a roll call of council. I'm Mayor Shaunson present. And chairing this meeting, Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor Schwint.
Present.
Thank you. I need a motion that council reconvenes in open session. Moved by Councillor Bryant, second by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor, and that's carried. I'll start by acknowledging the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial, and that Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. And I thank the Chinatan, also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land, and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no items to come forward from closed. We do have minutes from Council of June 18th. Would someone like to move those? Councillor Schwint, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We have two delegations this evening, both of which follow the presentation of staff's report. As a reminder, delegates have a maximum of 7 minutes to speak unless council or the clerk has set a different time, which I don't think they have. There will be a timer on the screen and you'll hear a warning when you have 1 minute, so don't jump, and another one when your time is up. Once you're finished, please wait for questions from council, and when there are no more questions, you may stay for the rest of the meeting or leave when you want to. Council discussion and debate will start when all questions of clarification have finished. So first is the Woolwich Sledge Hockey Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Grant Request. And I will ask council and committee support. Specialist, Tanya.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to council. Good evening. One could argue that agenda items like this are literally the best parts of our job as council and staff. The potential to help a group in the community provide a service or a program that makes a positive difference in the lives of others. So I am excited to be part of presenting that opportunity to council tonight. Our current grant applicant, Woolwich Sledge Hockey, is here this evening and will speak to you about their program and about them as an association. So I won't get into too much detail and steal their thunder and the work that they do. I will add, however, that during the application review process, I learned a great deal not only about the sport, but the high level of prestige that this group has brought and continues to bring to Woolwich. They have certainly helped Woolwich help make it a very attractive destination for sledge hockey athletes and world scale events. So it's something to be very, very proud of. Woolwich Sledge Hockey's grant application definitely checks all the boxes for equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and aligns with the healthy community's goals in the strategic plan. With that in mind, I must emphasize that staff's recommendation is driven by the very real financial limitations that the budget has for us this year, and not a reflection of how deserving the proposal is. The report includes a list of the EDIB grants that were awarded so far in 2024. The Woolwich Grants program has been very popular again this year, but that also means that the grants budget has also been very well used. Staff considered different avenues and developed a recommendation to provide a $1,500 grant as Woolwich Sledge Hockey, drawing from 3 sources within the grants budget as per the report. This allows some funds to remain in the other grant categories, such as arts, for the rest of the year, while also providing some assistance to Woolwich Sledge Hockey. Staff have also recommended that the group apply for the annual grant program for 2025, which council could then consider as part of the 2025 budget process. So having said all that, if council has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer the easy ones and defer the hard ones to Jeff.
Are there any questions for staff? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Tanya. I noticed in attachment 1 of the application package on, sorry, page 9. The total for one sledge is about $1,300. So I'm just wondering if we're rounding up to the 1,500, or if I'm just missing something, because based on my reading, we're providing the funding for one of the sledges, correct? Perhaps we just wait for the
Could we
delegate.
defer to the applicant to
Absolutely.
explain that one?
Sure. We'll wait until you do your presentation. Are there other questions for staff? Councillor Burgess.
Thanks, through you, Mayor Shawns. Just wondering if we did want to increase it more than the 1,500, where you'd see that coming from?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Burgess. I did speak with Deputy Treasurer Petherick about where we could draw from if needed, and it would be the operating contingency reserve, very similar to where we drew for the banners for the WMC at the last meeting.
Thanks.
Other questions for staff? Okay, then we welcome Catherine Armstrong of Woolwich Sledge Hockey. I have seen them. I've seen them working, and they're amazing. I think the athletes that use them are just
Well, and staff, and thank you, Tanya, very much. My name is Catherine Armstrong, and I'm here representing the Woolwich Sledge Hockey Association in application for the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Grant. I am not a professional grant writer. I am a taxpayer, a nurse, and most importantly, a mom of 2 boys, one to which has cerebral palsy. And as an ICU nurse, I would rather do CPR and bring you back to life than to do this right now. I'm going to first tell you a quick story of my introduction to Woolwich Sledge, or the Thrashers, as we call them, and what they have done for my son and also myself. Can I pause, or do we have to keep going? Okay. If they can't, I can keep talking. It's just some pictures and a picture of my son as well. So this will highlight the impact Woolwich Sledge has on equity, inclusion, and belonging. I, like most parents on the Thrashers, have a child with disabilities, or exceptionalities, as we should be considering. Owen was born with cerebral palsy from a birth trauma and did not meet his milestones easily. He did not walk until he was 3.5 years old, using a walker and leg braces for the first years of mobility. That's him. So that's where he started, and this is where he's at. He had gross and fine motor issues, as well as speech difficulties, sending us to countless. Jeremy's wife, actually, we were in her program and helped a lot. As a first-time mom, I watched many dreams fade. Owen was always a happy social kid, eager to be included with other children and activities. We tried Owen in sports like soccer, swimming, attempted skating, but they were too fast, too difficult, and most didn't accommodate children with disabilities, unless on an individual basis. Team sports seemed unattainable, and Owen was made to feel different, with kids constantly asking, "Why do you walk funny? What's wrong with your legs? What's wrong with your talking?" As we shake off those moments, as kids say the darndest things, as a mom wanting to protect her child, think back in your life or different. It's not fun. Sport is supposed to be fun. Through our physiotherapist at Kids Ability, we were told of this amazing parasport local program in Elmira. Not only would it offer a team sport opportunity, but with kids like Owen, with an added bonus of building strength outside a therapy session. We contacted the Thrashers, where we were greeted with kindness and enthusiasm. Owen was encouraged to watch the amazing parasport, then try for himself. He was fitted with a sled and set off on the ice. He soon met Carson. He too had cerebral palsy, and together these two were flying on ice like never did their 2 feet on land. I never really felt like Owen fit in or belonged, and the anxiety of a parent for their child's happiness and success was always present. That anxiety and lost camaraderie, sportsmanship, friendship in both myself and Owen, a true sense of belonging. And if you want to show the rest of this, oh, it's not clicking through. You can see all the rest of the kids, not just my own. This is our team. You see, I never knew until I joined the board of directors just how much a sled cost. We paid for registration, bought a helmet, the pads like any other hockey kid, and away we went. What I didn't know is how much Woolwich Sledge Hockey was doing to provide equity and accessibility to the unofficial sport of Canada and of Woolwich. Where a child in stand-up hockey can purchase a pair of skates, or even at Play It Again or hand-me-down sports, a sledge can cost upwards of $1,500, depending on needed attachments, sticks, and equipment. Woolwich Sledge, through various partnerships and fundraisers locally, have been able to provide an opportunity for persons with disabilities to have access to playing hockey without extra financial hardships. Now, fast forward 6 years, Owen is now 14 years old and the junior team goalie. I did not ask to be a goalie mom, nor the expense of it.
Nobody asks
No,
for that.
no, it's kind of stressful. But the happiness in the change room and on the ice is palpable. Owen proudly wears his Woolwich Thrashers gear around town, volunteers at Legion breakfast, and has a sense of pride, confidence, and a sense of self that I can only say has grown with the help of this organization. Not to mention his physical strength. This sport family has done so much for my son and myself that I want to ensure the longevity of our program to help kids for generations to come. So in keeping with the Township of Woolwich guiding principle, as quoted, support healthy and active living and meet people's needs for daily living throughout an entire lifetime, and the goals of the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging grants, I have come to request funds to order and purchase 4 sleds with specialized sticks and attachments, which will provide years of enjoyment for people with disabilities in this community. Woolwich Sledge started in 2009, due in part to the wonderful accessible memorial arena on Snyder Ave, to which on Saturdays we've called home for 15 years. Together with organizations such as the Legion, Maple Syrup Festival, the Steam Thrashers, and the Township of Woolwich, we have 2 competitive teams, and now this year beginning our fundamentals program, as we have seen 17 new kids join in the last 2 years. We have hosted parasport initiatives like the Team Canada versus Team USA Summit Series and have established championship wins from our open team for the last 2 years. This small town feel of Woolwich is growing world-class para-ice athletes, and that is something to be proud of. With this grant donation, we will continue to provide accessible and equitable para-hockey to our community. Thank you for your consideration in this fiscally responsible time.
Thank you. And I hope you never have to, but if you have to do CPR on me, that was great.
I'm pretty good at it.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, the delegate. Thanks for that presentation and sharing all that. Just a question on the dollars here. Last year you said you did some fundraising through bingo nights and Legion. Are you looking to do that again this year?
Legion offers different opportunities for the bingo, and when they come up, we sort of jump on that. The Steam Thrashers have closed their account and they're no longer. They have been a proud sponsor for a number of years and have been our primary source for a lot of our equipment. And so they're no longer. We did get a KSA grant as well from the program this year, and they are no longer as well.
Okay, so the KSA you won't get for the 50% you mentioned going forward?
Correct. So what we have is
Okay,
never again to have, they've closed down shop.
okay. And then those 4 sleds, that would be sufficient for the people coming to play now, or would that be for future growth or for spares, or how does that work?
So it's future growth. These poles are extendable. So it doesn't fit one child, it fits, and then the buckets are interchangeable. So as you grow, like Owen has, you change the bucket size, but you keep the bottom. And then as someone grows to the next, so equipment is lasting maybe a decade.
Okay,
And so we'll provide for children along the way in their journey.
thanks. And lastly, we hosted the provincials or something this year, didn't we? Is that maybe
I think
for the
We've
director?
hosted provincials and Canada as well.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Councillor Cadeau.
I'm just following up to the previous question that I asked, and I think you answered it. I just want to make sure that I'm firm on what you're saying is it's for the sledge as well as the additional specialized equipment that they would need to compete in the sport.
So
Okay.
this is the sled. We're looking to buy certain sizes of the buckets. And it's an anti-tip bar. We only have so many. Also, the sticks come separately, and if you look at the quotes, they are not in the sled, so sledge plus a stick. All of our kids still buy their own helmets and equipment, pay for registration, so it's nearly the equipment.
Okay.
Sorry, should I have that on? I usually am told I'm very loud and I should simmer down.
Councillor Schwint.
Thanks, that was an impressive presentation. Following up, I'm curious now, how many sleds do you have and how many, I guess, maximum sleds would you use at one time on the ice? I'm assuming they're interchangeable.
So each kid is offered a sledge for the year. It allows them to actually go to school programs with their children, right? So everyone goes to kids skate-a-thons programs, community skates, and our kids are allowed to use that for the year. And so they can practice and go to free skates and that kind of thing. So they're fitted at the beginning of the year, they go home, and then at the next year, they're fitted again. So 5 kids on the ice playing, then each 3 lines. There's like 15 on the junior team, probably about 17 on the open team, and then all of our new kids that are starting.
Perfect, thanks.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
and, we'll discuss the request. Councillor Burgess, did I see your hand? No, you were just. You want to start?
I'll just jump right in and make the motion. That staff has there, but can I bump the number up to 5,000? If that's,
You can do whatever you want.
I think it's a worthwhile cause. I think it's important. As we said, we have the arena here that's caters to that, and we have the provincials and nationals. And again, it's kind of been a first come, first serve on the fund, so it's a bit unfair, and this can call it unfair that they're now the last applying, so they get a bit less, but going forward, apply ahead of time, maybe during the budget time. But I think for this, if we can make the motion for 5,000, that'd be great.
So Councillor
second
Grant has seconded it. Okay. Discussion. I guess I do have a question. So that extra funding would come from the operating contingency, and do you know what the balance is in that account? Or no? Okay. Oh, yes, Jeff has all the hard answers.
Mayor Shantz, I'm sorry, I don't know the balance of the account, but we did confirm that there was enough if council wanted to make a motion like this.
Okay, thanks. Further discussion? Then I'll call a question. All those in favor? And that's carried. So we will. When do you play? Do you have a regular time?
Regular times are always 1 to 3 on Saturdays.
1 to 3 on Saturday. Excellent.
Thank you very much. And certainly as you can see, honors. And so we would happily do something in the newspaper as well as label each those ones so we know where those have come over the years.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is agricultural enforcement update, and I will call on Manager of Planning, Jeremy Vink. Mr. Vink.
Good evening, Council. Obviously not as exciting as the last presentation, but we'll get you through it anyway. I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of the history and our report. Here. So, as you are aware, the agricultural review started a number of years ago with our previous council, where we had some complaints around the community about what was going on in the rural agricultural areas. And direction from council as a result was to proceed with agricultural enforcement. And we moved through that process. There's been a number of reports to council on updates about as we move through the process and going through the enforcement process. And then because of concerns over speed and fairness, we did hire a consultant to go through the process. That was last year, to kind of do the whole township and finish up where staff had kind of got only through part of the township. So we've been moving through that process. The consultant completed their works, but end of last year, council did direct staff to kind of slow down the process basically. And to come to a report to tell us where things are and what. Just a bit of history on the actual planning context of the on-farm diversified. So this takes us right back to the provincial policy statement, which tells us what's permitted in different areas of our township. So we're talking in the countryside, where our prime agricultural areas, which is the vast majority of the township. In agricultural areas, we're permitted agricultural uses, agricultural related uses, and on-farm diversified uses. Those are the 3 things we're permitted to have. So the definitions are there, the 2 of the various types. Agricultural uses, basically farming as we would know it for the most part. Agriculture related uses are those farm related commercial and industrial uses that support farms in the community and in the area and benefit being proximity to the farm operations. So you might see that like a feed mill or a tractor repair operation, that kind of thing that serves their local community, but needs to be outside of the settlement and serve their farmers. And then the on-farm diversified, which is the one we've been dealing with mostly through the agricultural review. And those are secondary uses to the principal agricultural use. They're very limited in area. And then it kind of goes through a bunch of uses. There are a lot of opportunities for different types of uses that fall within that. Basically, they can be industrial, commercial, but they're small in scale on the farm parcel, and they kind of fit within the farm itself. And even ground mounted solar is actually supposed to be considered as on-farm diversified, for example. So just going through those just a little bit more, I just outlined here a little bit more detail. If somebody wanted to go through that as to what an agriculture related uses are, like I said, those mean your farming uses. That's your typical, whether it's a cash cropper, your livestock farmer, that kind of thing. These are the main characteristics of a agriculture related use, and generally speaking. And there's some agriculture related uses, just as an example, that they support. So they support those farming operations. So these are the bigger contexts here, like I said, feed mills, things like that in the area. And then the on-farm again, just to go through those. The provincial policy statement gives a guideline, but it is the province's guideline they put out separately. and it's their guidelines for permitted uses on primary agricultural areas that goes in detail with these on-farm diversified uses. And it sets out parameters of what meets that criteria. And these are the criteria in front of you right now. There's 5 basically. So one is located on the farm. So it has to be a farm operation. So there has to be a farm there. Then it has to be secondary to that principal agricultural use. So secondary basically means size. That's the only really easy way to calculate this. There's no other easy method to calculate secondary, so it goes by size, and then limited in area back up to that size again, right? And it's usually a percentage, and the percentage given to us by the province is about 2% of the farm parcel. So if it's taking up about 2%, that includes the buildings, the parking, anything dedicated to the use itself sits within that 2%. That's the limited area. And it also includes home occupations, home industries, agriculture-related uses, agritourism uses, produce, value-added etc. And the use shall be compatible with the surrounding agricultural area. So it shouldn't be hindering agricultural operations. It's there to support a farmer. It's not there to hinder other farms. So you don't want something that would take away from the rural character, for example, that dominate or to take away from that, and also be environmentally appropriate. And then there's just some examples. Like I said, a lot of their uses, very small scale, basically dry. Nothing heavy sewage users are permitted because obviously they'd be in private systems and we don't want too many large private systems. Provincial policy flows into the regional official plan. There is policies in the regional official plan. I'm not going to dive into those tonight because the regional official plan is slightly out of date. And they're not consistent with our current provincial policies at the moment, but they are there, but we have to conform to them. So I'm going to spend more time on our official plan than the regional official plan. So the township's official plan, we did a review. As noted, we went through the agricultural process back when the complaints came in. We had an agricultural committee that was made up with farming community to help us create the policies and the zoning that's in place today. So we had a large group of farmers. We connected with the community. We did our public open houses and processes to gauge where we should go with this. And that's where we ended up with our current policy framework. So the goal here was, with the farming community at the time, they wanted something that protected agriculture and farming and that maintained that rural character that we have. It was very critical for them that we didn't lose that. That was the important aspect. So they wanted people to drive through the countryside and see it was a rural farming community, and first and foremost. Obviously, it was meant that it was supposed to support farming, so that was the goal. So the farming was the main element, and this was just there to support it. So that's what they wanted. It was always tied to the farm parcel was on, and that's consistent with what's required in the provincial policy statements. It has to be tied to the parcel it's on. Planning deals with a parcel by parcel fabric, so we can't deal with other properties. It's parcel by parcel. And obviously, our policies, as I noted, are consistent with the provincial policy and the regional official plan. And this just goes a little more in detail of the policies that's actually in our official plan. So in the provincial guidelines, that it's related to a farm, it's part of a farm, it ensures the farm is the primary use, and this is just a secondary use, the 2%, and then the types of farm uses that could be permitted, again, consistent with provincial policy. Obviously, if it's supposed to be secondary to a farm, it can't be severed. And we don't want uses that are obnoxious or offensive, something that would take away from the rural character and be detrimental. And just some of the, again, just further policies there that were part of that took place. And then we implement this into our zoning bylaw at the time. So what does the zoning bylaw do? It implements our official plan. It's the laws, the bylaws that we use to promote that orderly development and determines what can and can't take place in each zone. So as I noted, we did go through the process back in earlier that we went through the zoning process that implemented the on-farm diversified uses. We just recently updated them in our current zoning bylaw. We just passed in the end of April, where we did some minor modifications here. So this is consistent. These are the types of uses that would fall into those categories. So like I said, basically industrial uses, dry uses, agritourism, and then it's tied to farm. And then part of what we did at the time was realizing that smaller parcels are not majorly farmed or generally not farmed. It's hard to put something on a small parcel under 6 hectares and say it's a farm parcel and have an industrial use on that too. And I'm going to go into the home occupations, which will explain this a little bit more, but the home occupations kicked in at this level at the smaller parcels. So on anything over 6 hectares or more, the 2% is basically what happens. So this is where we get into the reg, and like I said, it covers everything on the tied to the on-farm diversified use. So it's the buildings, the parking, any loading spaces, any outdoor storage that go with it. So it's all tied to that. In terms of appearance, again, the key element was we wanted to look like a rural agricultural farm. So we wanted the buildings to look like agricultural buildings. So they were to maintain basically a 1-story building that was typical to a farm drive shed look. So there's a maximum height, but want the peak roof, that kind of thing. So it looked like if you drove by, it would look like one of the other farm buildings, basically. So it fit in. Again, compatibility, we wanted to make sure it wasn't too close to a neighboring residence because some of these are industrial uses, so we didn't want neighbors to be impacted. So we set a separation distance of 150 meters to a neighboring residence. And that helps for both parcels, to be honest, in some respects, because obviously the business doesn't want to have a problem with their neighbor either. And then retail limitation. So there is a limitation. We don't allow a lot of retailing aspects. And this comes from the regional official plan. The regional official plan, as I noted, is a bit further behind, and it is very limiting on what we can do from a retail perspective. So since we must conform to the regional official plan, we can't be more permissive. We have to be in line with it. We can't give more retail. So there is limitations right now on the retailing aspect. We're hoping that when we get a chance and the regional plan is amended or changed, we will be able to amend this section in our policies and our zoning too. And just some of the process and the costs comments to go through. So how do we go through on-farm diversified uses? How do we deal with them? So as we've been going through the agricultural review enforcement process, we've been going parcel by parcel, sending people out the letter if we think there might be a potential property, just saying, could you reach out to us and confirm with us what's going on in the property? We then, they give us a call or come into the office. We clarify what uses are taking place. And then if there's non-farm diversified use, we start walking them through that process. So we determine with them, okay, what building do you use? What do you use it for? How big is this? And then they give us a basic floor plan, site plan, and they give that information to us. And then we will start to go through the on-farm diversified use site plan process, which is basically a process purely with staff that we circulate to our building and fire departments for some comments. We craft the agreement, we craft the drawing for them, and we make sure everything kind of fits within the 2% and essentially hand them a site plan agreement. That in total, the site plan agreement and a certificate of occupancy is $2,750. I want to give that in comparison to a typical parcel in town, an urban commercial property or industrial property. They start at around $7,000 and they have to hire their own consultants. So they're getting a good price. We're not trying to gouge them. We're more trying to make sure we know where they are, control with the size. We understand that they fit within it and kind of pay for our costs and time to go through the site plan process. And then they do a 1 annual renewal fee. Part of that came from our discussions with the farming community at the time, is that creep. The farm properties, obviously, it's easy to push things here and there and creep. So to prevent that creep, which easily became too big on a parcel and went way beyond what they had ever thought was they were going to use, we wanted to stop them pushing out. So we said, hey, do a renewal. You come in every year and tell us, is the business still operating the same way? And are you still within the same confines? We prevent that creep, whether it's into another part of the drive shed or pushing further outside with the if someone doesn't meet the on-farm diversified uses, they could become and be an agriculture related use. And that's where I said things where they make something that supports agriculture or they support agriculture in some form or fashion. So that could be, they could manufacture hay wagons, they could manufacture silos, they could be a tractor repair operation that's bigger than that 2%. So they've exceeded that 2% maximum. they could fall under this opportunity. They're site specific because there's a number of tests under the provincial policy statements that say, hey, do you serve the broader community? And each operation is a little bit different. Obviously, a company making silos is very different from a person maybe fixing farm tractors for his neighbor, from another person who might be a feed mill servicing the 5 counties around us. So each operation is slightly different, and each has to kind of justify, do they meet those tests? So they go through a site-specific zoning, and that's obviously a bit more costly to go through that process, but again, it is cheaper than we do try to keep it on the cheaper side than our general commercial operations in town or industrial. And then if somebody doesn't meet all those, they could go for an OPA and official plan amendment and zone change, but I've never seen anyone do that, nor have I seen people really who need to do that mostly. Those would be uses where I would say you're not meeting any one of the on-farm diversified, or you don't meet the agriculture related, you've gone way beyond in this use that's probably not even permitted in the agricultural area and should be something that's located in an urban area. So we generally in those cases wouldn't even direct someone that way. We'd tell them they have the option, but it's just probably not even a good starter to spend that much money and time and effort. And when they go through the process with us and we put them in there, figure things out, which category they fit in, and they go through that process, once they're done with planning, they do have to go through the building permit process and pay development charges. etc. on that sheet compared to the building permit and development charge fees in the end of the day. So they are charged at an industrial commercial rate if you're an on-farm diversified business. So they are treated the same as an industrial business in Elmira or St. Jacobs or Breslau. They're the same because they're competing with them. They're the same type of thing. So they get charged at an industrial commercial rate on that portion of their property. And they pay the same for building permit fees. So taxes and building permit fees are very similar that way of how they're treated. Like I said, we walk everyone through it as best we can, and then to get them into compliance, we give them a bunch of time, usually about 6 months, to get everything into alignment, and we work with them. The one area I said I was going to touch on was the home business tradesperson we added. And that's part of what we added back in the day when we created the on-farm diversified use regulations to match the provincial. As I said, on parcels that are smaller, the 6 hectares or less, basically there's not a lot of farming going on a lot of these properties most times. There's barely anything there, and at the 2%, you're not going to get much of an industrial on-farm diversified use either. So we introduced this opportunity is on these smaller properties, they could run a small home business, which is bigger than your typical office in your house. They could use their shed to run like a small contractor's yard, and basically run it from their home, like a landscaper, electrician, plumber, those kinds of things, a small woodworking operation. Those types of things can be run in these home business tradesperson, and they can use one of their buildings on the site to do that. And it's small scale. It's tied to the house, not to the prop. It's tied to being accessory to a residence, not to a farm. It's similar to what's permitted in Mapleton and some other surrounding townships, as well as Center Wellington. So a lot of the regional ones don't have this in their zoning right now, but we do. We're consistent with some of our surrounding neighbors to the north and west and east. Can look like types of uses, total floor areas, etc. So they can use their accessory building to do that. And again, there's some compatibility just that they're far enough away from their neighbors. So we introduced all these opportunities to try utilize our agricultural area the best we can and support our farming community consistent with provincial policies. And that's where, when we went through the agricultural enforcement, we've been working through with each of the property owners that we've been dealing with. In the report, staff have noted to you that initially staff had went through about 90 properties, 50 of which went through site plan approval. Others just needed certificates of occupancy. There was others we reached out to just didn't have anything. They just clarified for us that they weren't operating any businesses, and it was fine. So each one we walked through were the ones we did have consultation with, and they did have to go through the process. There was always concerns, it was going to take them to scale back or meet the needed to or wanted to have, they should walk them through, but the costs are comparable, as I said, to any other industrial or commercial use, or cheaper for the parcels than some of the ones in an urban area. And then the taxation side, which we don't control. but we do inform them on the taxation side, and that's up to Municipal Property Assessment Corporation to tax them. And whether we legalize them or not as a non-farm diversified use, doesn't matter. MPAC can go out and they could see it and they could tax them. There's properties out there that were taxed 10 years ago and thought they were legal because they were paying property taxes. And we said, no, you don't meet zoning. And they said, well, I paid property taxes. The two are not connected. So there is a total disconnect, unfortunately, but just to make that clear. Stantec, as you are well aware, we had Stantec go out and complete the rest of the township and go through and take a look at things and complete the last portion of the township, which was just over half. They also went through a number of properties. You have their report in the package tonight too. Again, they went through and analyzed and kind of showed you what they came across. Consistency across the board, it's not easy to say that there's anything consistent other than that. Most of the properties that if they were running an on-farm diversified use could probably meet our requirements of on-farm diversified. They could meet the 2%. Very few have to jump up to become an agriculture related use and go through the zone change, but there are a few. They're beyond that 2%. And there's just no other way to kind of deal with them other than a one-on-one process. There are some properties out there that already have site-specific zoning that have some issues that they have to address. Obviously, if you have a site-specific zoning and you're not meeting it and you can't meet it, you're going to have to come in and amend that site-specific zoning or scale back to meet site-specific zoning. That's always the choice. But those, again, we can't just generalize and fix under the zoning bylaw in and of itself because they're site-specific elements. They're not the norm. They're individual, unique to that site. So across the board, there wasn't anything we could say to you and say, hey, here's some big changes we can make to make things easier. There's some elements here that we're missing, or there's consistent elements here that we could take further look at and change. We weren't seeing it. And that's where we kind of saying just to council say, there's nothing consistent here to say that there's a big change that has to be made. We made some changes under the recent amendment to the zoning bylaw, which we already anticipated, which will make things a little bit easier. But even still, there weren't massive changes, but we'll help make some process, some improvements for some people who didn't quite meet maybe a policy or regulation. One of the bigger areas we are seeing some challenges with is the home business tradesperson. Although we introduced it and didn't exist before, there's some operations out there that just are too big on a parcel that they're on, and trying to scale it back. And they're quite large. Some of them, like they're double the size we would permit and double the size that any municipality is permitting right now. So they're not minor to the residential use, they're quite large. So we're having some challenges that way, but even those aren't necessarily consistent in the type of use. They're just here and there that these uses are operating, that we've seen a few of them that are larger than they should be, and are challenged by that to meeting that requirement of being fitting within the 112 square meters on a home business trade person on the smaller parcels. So all in all, our process seems to be working. We walk them through the process and help and guide them, and we get them to where they need to be as best we can. Like it is the best process we've been finding, that we can walk them through and then they're not lost, they're not confused, they're not hiring consultants, they're not spending tons of money to do that if they don't need to, if they can meet the on-farm diversified use regulations. And that's where we try to start them and walk them through the process. So again, no major changes that we're seeing, no big changes to challenge us right now. Doesn't mean something won't come up in the future. One of the things we've noted and we've been struggling with is when we were finishing up the Stantec process is when council kind of told us to put the brakes on and slow things down and not pursue enforcement. Unfortunately, when that happened, it kind of stopped people coming in talking to us. So that last section of the Stantec work kind of stalled with us, is that we weren't getting people communicating back with us. So we don't know if some of those are going to have some stumbling blocks or not, because we encouraged them to try to resolve issues with us, but a lot of them didn't. And they just kind of said, we're going to wait and see what happens with this process. So we're hoping within our zoning regulations to meet them. So staff's recommendation in front of you tonight is to continue with the agricultural enforcement and just move forward. Why? A, it's fair to the parcels that we've already dealt with and they've had to go through the process. Fair in terms to the other businesses in the community. There's businesses in the urban area that are have told us in the past, hey, why do they get away with things and no one does anything? We're competing against them and with them. Everyone should be treated fairly. So let's deal with that. Also, we want to maintain our rural character. So if we don't kind of slow these down, we're going to hamper and negatively impact our rural character, that we're going to start seeing a lot of industries in our rural area, and it's not going to look like our agricultural area. It's going to negatively impact it with industries and businesses. And we want to maintain that. This is our rural character. That's what our community wants. That's what our farming community wants to see as well. We want to protect that farming community. It also protects our tourism aspect, and that's part of our economic development plan, is to protect and preserve and enhance our agritourism. So the more we take away from agriculture, the more it hurts our agritourism aspects as part of our plans too. Lastly, if we don't proceed, it sets a bit of a tone that they can do what they want. That's a negative and not a good scenario for us from a staffing perspective, because we are now aware of a lot of these operations. And if we don't pursue something with them and tell them to come into compliance, then we are aware, and we're setting ourselves up a bit of a legal issue. Our lawyers already told us if we're not going to deal with them, that will cause some challenges, that they could come back and say, no one's dealt with us, you knew of it. Why didn't tell me to stop then? So why do I have to stop now? Or even legally, knowing that they're out there and not dealing with them. There's a health and safety aspect to some of these properties, that they're operating businesses illegally in buildings that don't meet building code. So there's regulations there that have to. All this together, staff's recommendation is that the best way is to just move forward and wrap this up as best we can with a staffing perspective, to just move forward and legalize all the properties. The other directions are definitely not our preferred, because there's a lot of negative issues related to going the other routes. So in the interests of everyone's best side of taking this, that's our suggestion from a staff perspective. I would say it's not necessarily staff's preferred perspective sometimes, because it will be a lot of work for staff still to wrap this up, but it is, I think, the best interest of the township. I am here for lots of questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Jeremy. If council were to make a decision to not pursue the enforcement on this, presumably that would free up some staff resources. I'm just wondering what you would be able to reallocate those resources to, that may not be able to, be achieved if we were to move forward with the enforcement.
If we're going to reallocate, and it's not easy to say reallocate, I guess. I get what you're saying, and I appreciate it. It is a good question. We have a number of ongoing projects, larger projects, or studies that we're working on between the half funding, where we got a number of projects we'll be working through there, wrapping up the official plan, getting that work done. There's a number of other studies that will flow still that are good and that are coming next year that we'll be doing. So we'll just have staff working on those kind of processes as naturally, as well as whatever comes in for general planning applications. So it does free up resources somewhat. But not to say I'm going to have somebody sitting around doing nothing, because that's not what's going to happen. Is basically we end up doing this off the side of our desk, spread out between 3 or 4 staff members, trying to tackle them one here and there.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to Jeremy. You mentioned health and safety issues. Are you able to elaborate on what type of health and safety issues we could be looking at?
Good question through the chair. So some of, as I mentioned, these buildings mostly that they're being utilized were issued as farm buildings under the building code. Farm buildings in the building code are at a much lower standard than an industrial or commercial building. So snow loads, interior design, things like that, fire separations, they are totally different. So when you do an industrial commercial building and you're talking somebody welding in a shop or paint booths, these types of things in there, they have to meet industrial commercial building code standards for electrical, fire separations to the rest of the building, that kind of thing, just for health and safety. And those are done through the building code process to ensure it's done properly. And obviously they've converted it without a permit. we can't ensure that that's done safely and properly, and that those buildings are structurally sound for the businesses they're running.
And just to follow up, so does that put us in a situation where we could be facing liability if we don't bring them up to code?
Good, definitely a good question. And our legal lawyer's comment to that is yes, we are actually at risk. There is some potential concerns.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. I am glad Councillor Bryant brought that up because that was what I had written down. Do you know roughly how many buildings we're talking about that? Are falling with the not meeting building code?
For the chair to Council Grant, right now, like the first round we looked at 90 and we did 50 site plans. So I could tell you there was over 50 that had problems that would have to have gone through building permit after this. They went through planning and they did not meet codes for various things. And upgrading them was a challenge for some. And some just built brand new buildings because the upgrades were just so significant. I would say because the last portion with Stantec that they did, you're probably looking at a similar amount of structures that are possibly still out there that we just haven't addressed, for example.
And just to follow up, if we were to pause or not follow through with enforcement, would those buildings be referred to the building department as like an issue? I'm just kind of wondering where that would fall in depending on what we decide.
So at this point, no. Generally speaking, staff does not refer things to other staff. It comes through, we deal with enforcement through complaint basis from the public, not through staff processes. And we wouldn't know for sure because like I said, we don't know what's going on in each property and they haven't told us. So we wouldn't even have enough detail to refer building back out there to say there is something for them to deal with
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
offhand.
Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. We do have a delegate, Nick Weber, from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture.
Hello, my name is Nick Weber. I'm actually from the Waterloo Federation of Agriculture. I'm not quite important enough to be from the Ontario
Well, my
delegation.
notes say.
I know, loosely affiliated, but not part of the Ontario Federation. We're the local Waterloo Federation.
Well, welcome anyway.
Yes, thank you very much. So again, thanks to the council for having me here. My name is Nick Weber. I am the local Federation president for the Waterloo Federation of Agriculture. I'm here today to speak in support that is doing all the hard work here for as far as this on-farm diversified uses. As you guys know, and as Jeremy has mentioned multiple times today, that farmland is a very precious and finite resource. And we do the best we can to try and preserve that. And our feeling at the Federation is that sometimes a bit of regulation is not a bad thing to have, as it helps keeps things controlled, helps keep farmland farmed, but not allow the potential where lots of industrial spaces could creep into the countryside where they would not belong or would impact the, I can say, the hard work that's been done here over the last 25, 30 years at both the local township level here and the greater regional level, where we have a very unique system here in Waterloo region where we have such a vibrant and diversified farming, I can say, biome, I guess, for lack of a better word for it, where we are very unique in the province where it doesn't exist anywhere else. And we try very hard to keep that balance. And we really do applaud that the work is being done here at the regional level and especially here at the township level. As Jeremy has said, what you guys do here as far as allowing and coaching the farms through this process here is unheard of in most other townships. Most of them would have to go to get a consultant right away to even get some of the stuff done. So the fact the township staff here is able to walk them through this process, kind of, in a sense, coach them through it, is a huge step and a huge benefit for this township, and much less the whole region in that sense too. It's something that's very unique, and it's something that's definitely worth keeping around here. And I would say the Federation is very much in support of what you guys are doing here and how things are progressing here. And that's pretty much all I have to say here tonight. I'm just here in support of what's going on here. We were kind of called into this here in the last little bit here, but it has been noted across countryside that this is a good thing that's happening here, and making sure that things are conforming, keeping things proper and keeping things true is something we do struggle with at times as farmers, but it's something we have to be held accountable to at times as well too. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Weber?
Didn't figure it would be more.
Thank you very much. Okay, there is a recommendation before council. Councillor Schwint.
Been listening to this presentation. I know we had a long conversation as council and wrestled with this topic last November, last fall anyway. And I thought currently I'm not comfortable that we as council or we as a township have identified and have it right in terms of what our planning and zoning requirements are for activities on our rural properties. I want to say activities because are they businesses, are they home-based businesses? Mr. Vink has a couple of different terms, and I don't think we've defined it as well as we could, and having been as inclusive as I think we should be going forward. So based on that, I'm not comfortable with going ahead with the new policy in terms of enforcement. Would be a lot more comfortable going back to our previous policy that was complaints driven. When issues come forward, we address them as a township. Does it make sense? Does not make sense. Heard the concerns about liability, and I guess I'm going to push back a little bit on that one. I believe, based on my experience, insurance companies are doing a pretty darn good job of ensuring that buildings are getting safer and better all the time. In order to renew insurance policies as farm owners on our buildings, we're getting inspections yearly or biannually. So I think that's being looked after fairly well. And while the township has a theoretical liability in this respect, and if I was a lawyer, I'd be saying the same thing. There's a theoretical liability. I don't think I've seen cases in this township anyway, where we've seen enforced the building code on a business that we didn't know was operating. So I think that's 3 or 4 steps down the road that we've got some other things we got to worry about first. So I'd be a lot more comfortable going back to a complaint-based system. And as complaints come in, staff bring them to council. And we as council discuss what further action should be taken at that point.
Okay. Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, I appreciate the work that Director Freeze and Mr. Vink and their team have done, helping out the farmers and working with them. But I think the issue here is not zoning and do we have the right policies, or are we just enforcing them? It's, do we want to move ahead with this enforcement? And as a government, hiring a bunch of people and paying a bunch of money to go audit all the businesses, to me, just doesn't seem right. Like if we heard Doug Ford was going to do that, or Trudeau was going to hire a bunch of CRA agents to audit all the businesses, I feel like there'd be a bit of an uproar. I think we should be more looking to support our local farmers and small business owners and not kind of chasing after them and having this active enforcement. I think it's important they follow the rules and all that, but I agree we should go back to the complaint basis and not going after them by hiring extra people and spending more money. And also just pushing back a bit on the losing farmland for these businesses. We have a very unique heritage and diversity here with our Mennonite culture, and they look to rely on a 100-acre farm. That's their livelihood. So we need to support that, which means on-farm diversified businesses. And a lot of them, where they're building these barns or shops or what they're using, it's not on prime agricultural land. It's reutilizing their existing building. It's I don't think it's taken away from our uniqueness, from our heritage, from the view as you're driving down the road. It's just supporting our residents, and I think we should, go back to the complaint basis and not look to continue on enforcing all this through going out and seeking it through active enforcement.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a recommendation. I don't see a motion.
I'm wondering
Councillor
if,
Cadeau.
could we hear from staff, maybe just in response to some of the statements that were made, you know, what would it look like if we were to go back to the previous policy? I know that a lot of work has been done here. I would hate for that to be all for naught. But at the same time, I do respect the case that Councillor Schwint and Councillor Burgess are making. We do want to make farming easy. We want to make it, we want to make farmers comfortable in making a living, right? but I'm hesitant to just lose all of the work that we've done as well. So I'm trying to find the right balance here, and I'm just hoping that you can steer us in the right direction.
Mr. Vink.
To the chair, to council. So whether we like it or not, we spent $106,000 in enforcement last year. That's what council directed. That's what council spent. That's what we spent money on. If we don't proceed, we spent 106,000 on nothing. Unfortunately, that's one comment. So the money's spent there. We're not trying to not support farmers. We're supporting agriculture. There's policies here to support them to do the on-farm diversified businesses and to operate them. We have no problem with them doing that. No problem with them continuing with that process. They just do it legally. To do that properly, they come through the zoning process. So like I said, we try to do it as cheaply and as efficiently as possible. And as you heard from from the delegation, we are unique. We don't send them out, and we do it the cheapest and most efficient way possible to work with the community and just to make sure their businesses are operating. So there's no easy answer other than saying, like I said, there's no block of time we're going to magically free up by not doing this. It's all stuff we will do just in the course of our day, property by property, day by day, here and there. It'll take up half an hour here and half an hour there. Between a few staff, it's not going to free up a major amount of time. So you're not taking a ton of time out of staff's time. Yeah, it's taking time over a big picture, but not that you're going to say we magically freed up a block of time. I guess that's the ultimate response, is we're not trying to hurt farming. We're trying to help farmers make sure they meet the requirements just as anything else. That's back to the fairness aspect. We've dealt with a third of the township and said they had to go through the process. And is it fair to about a third of the township or half that they had to go through the process and the other half doesn't? And is that fair to those farmers? And some of these aren't farmers that we're talking about. Some of them, like I mentioned, are not farming operations. They're running beyond that. We've stumbled across people using 5-10 acres for outdoor storage, for trailers. We've got other operations where they're stockpiling things they shouldn't be stockpiling. They've overtaken an entire. So it's not just as simple that we're going, oh, there's other businesses that are taking place here that are impacting our agricultural community too. So just understanding the broader context here is it's not just, we're not trying to hurt farmers, we're trying to protect the farmers. And to some of this enforcement is actually helping protect that farmland, maintains farmland in the broader sense. So I'm not giving you a great answer, I know, because the process is what it is. Outside of it, like I noted, if we stop the process, it puts us in a bit of a conundrum of how we handle the ones that we potentially are aware of out there. And then 5 years from now, if they're continuing to operate and have expanded and they said, well, you didn't care 3 years ago when you knew about it, why are you just trying to stop me now? It's putting us in a bad position, I think in a bad legal position. And that may hurt our agricultural community. So from a staff perspective, like I said, it's not necessarily the best, but at this point in time, our best direction forward is the direction that we just wrap this up and deal with everything and tell people, if you're not in conformity, we know it, and we're going to tell you you're not in conformity and you have to solve it. How far we pursue that, maybe is council's direction, but we don't want to also let them get away with it by doing nothing, as I'm suggesting is maybe the concern here.
Ms. Priest.
Sorry, if I could just add to that. So if we go ahead with the recommendation that's in the staff report, we would just bring it back to that level 0. And then going forward from there on would be again based on that complaint basis. But I did also want to clarify that we are responsible to implement the rules that are set out in the planning legislation in the PPS, those rules about the 2%. So if we are to receive a complaint, it would not come back to council. We would just go through and enforce. The council decides to go with this recommendation or go back to the only on complaint basis. We still have to enforce those policies.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you.
I'm struggling with it a little bit, but I do agree that I feel from a fairness standpoint, considering how much we've already have done for an enforcement and how many have already been affected, and then there's the cost aspect added on to that, I think it is something that we're gonna have to kind of go through with and complete the process. I have had residents reach out that have had their properties reviewed. Whether or not they were happy about that varied on individual, but I feel that they would be more upset if they had their property reviewed and then learned that a neighbor down the street got away with something that maybe didn't align with their policies because we decided to stop the enforcement earlier than we were intending in the first place.
Councillor Schwint and then Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, a couple of, I do wrestle with the fairness and equitable aspect of it, and also the cost in terms of staff time. So start with the fairness and being equitable, and fair isn't always equal. I've been told that multiple times in life, and I do believe it. And also I believe that two wrongs don't make a right. And if we're recognizing that going ahead with the enforcement policy is the direction we want to take, stop it now. Don't keep on adding more burden to more residents of the township if we feel it's the wrong policy. At the time we decided to go ahead, do the study, with hindsight, maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't go ahead with that. But at this point, I believe that stopping the process makes the most sense. And it's a cost question Councillor Cadeau had, Mr. Vink was working on it. It's a hard one for staff to quantify. My $100,000 on the consultant for a quality year. If we'd hire that in-house, they're doing the same amount of work going forward. That's $100,000 a year. I'm gonna call it one staff person. So hopefully the consultants are working as hard as our staff, and so it equals a 1-to-1. So maybe it's not quite that, maybe it's more than that, but there's definitely savings there. So I'd rather wear doing right for 60% of our residents that we haven't affected yet, and have 40% mad at us for a bad decision in the past on the other way around.
Councillor Burgess.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Johns. Yeah, just reiterating what Councillor Schwinn said on the fairness. Yeah, I don't think it's fair for everyone in the context that some had to go through this and not others, but it was a previous council that initiated this, and now there's no point in continuing it if it's going to be unfair to others to be able to do this. And just on the complaint question to Director Freeze, you mentioned whether there is a complaint, you still have to proceed with continuing to enforce PPS and that. Can we still, as a council, hear the complaint so that we are informed of what's happening and what the complaint is and what enforcement's being done in that?
Through you, Mayor Sean. So I would say that that would not be our typical practice because we do get a lot of complaints across the board. So if we brought them to council each time, it would be more, it would be less effective as far as our time, and I think less effective as far as your time. It's not to say that you can't request that, or if we couldn't do a summary at the end of the year and tell you what those complaints were that we did receive or something along those lines. Might be a little bit more efficient use of time though.
Depending on council's results today would just be interesting just for the next 10 years or on all other issues, but for this specifically, I think depending on how the vote comes, we can discuss it and what would be best.
Clerk Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shant. So just speaking about the enforcement side of things, because there are a few files that the planning department has handed off to the enforcement department. I would recommend that council does not get involved in directing enforcement officers for a specific outcome on cases. That's sort of the same as the police department, if you want to think about that. Just so council is aware, we've had 3 files that planning has turned over to us that were caught through the first part of the agriculture enforcement process. And I looked a few months ago, so this might be out of date, but at the time we had 2 active enforcement cases that we were working on where a member of the public complained about an agricultural property. So as Ms. Freeze said, if council were to direct staff to stop the agricultural enforcement process as set out in the report, bylaw would continue to receive public complaints and we would deal with that.
Councillor Cadeau and then Councillor Schwinn.
I just, excuse me, I wanted to pick up on something that Mr. Fink had said, that if we were to pause on enforcement, it's sending a very clear message that this isn't a priority for us, which could lead to, significant expansion of some of these operations, which could negatively impact farmland. So this is a very difficult decision.
Agreed. Councillor Schwinn.
So a couple points I'd bring up, and was prior to having the enforcement brought before council, I think it's worthwhile having council get a summary twice, so that we can understand better, is our planning practices working for the needs of our community? If there's 10 people saying this is bad, we as council should look at it. If there's one complaint every 5 years about an obscure property, maybe we got it mostly right. So having that context will be helpful as we go through further zoning bylaw reviews. And Councillor Cadeau's comments about going forward, will this lead to expansion and adverse effects? And best teacher for me is history. If we look back 20 years of complaint-based, I don't see a whole lot of issues in the township. Yes, there's some businesses that may not meet the letter of the law, but by and large, I think our rural countryside's been protected, has done well, and needs this, I guess, revenue stream, I'm going to call it, on the small businesses. And we should be encouraging and promoting it until we see there's a problem. And to me, the problem will be based on complaints coming in. We'll hear about it.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to this council. I feel how I'm feeling about this is that from a consistency standpoint, I would much rather see us continue enforcement so that we aren't put into a situation 5 years, 10 years down the road where we have a resident that's expanded their business significantly, where we know it wasn't legal, it wasn't enforced when we had the chance. So for myself, I would like to see us maybe continue enforcement, get ourselves to an equal basis across the township, and then move forward with a complaint-based system. But as it stands, I don't think I could support moving forward at this moment, just doing complaint-based. I'd like to see us get to kind of a ground level across the township first.
Ms. Priest.
So we can do that. That we can do twice a year to give council an update. I did also want to point out that the reason why this originally started was because the previous council was receiving complaints. So that's what started the whole process in the first place.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Were we getting a large number of complaints, or was it just one or two? Do we know how many were coming in? Sorry.
Through the chair to Councillor Bryant. So we received one major complaint openly, and the community in that vicinity came forward and asked to address their illegal issues. So we had a number of them come forward and address their concerns with us, realizing they had moved way beyond what our zoning permitted. So there was concerns. One person led the charge initially, but it then just kind of spread from there. Just that the neighborhood came in and said, yes, it's correct. It's true. We need to clean this up and address it.
Okay, so that just leads me to question, if we get one large complaint, say we've got a business that's expanded and expanded and expanded, what do we do with them? Do we shut them down? Do we make them go back to where they should be, or how do we deal with that?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Bryant. So we always try and work with them. The first step is if they get a complaint or they come in with us saying, hey, here's what we want to do, we're going to try to work with them to figure out solutions. Sometimes there is a solution on the location they're at. Sometimes we have to kind of direct them to an urban area. Let's say if they're outside in the countryside, and they're just getting too big. So doesn't mean we won't try find something for them and find those solutions and play them out. And we'll consultants if they need to. So we do our best to walk them through solutions and opportunities. And we try to sit down with them also to say, what is your plan? Like, what is your longer term plan? Let's not just fix today. What's your longer term plan? So you don't have this problem 5 years again. So let's do it jointly and figure it out and come to a solution. And as need be, we pull in economic development staff to assist or things like that. So we try to find the best solution to move forward.
Councillor Schwint.
From my interpretation of that answer, that's evidence for me the process was working. There was a complaint, a group of people in one area were concerned. We took action on that and then we broadened it. And that's where I think I would have said, no, let's stick to where the complaint was and fix that problem. So I'm not sure if council's ready to entertain a motion for see what happens, or you want more conversation.
Well, there is no motion on the floor. I guess
I'd-
technically by Roberts, I shouldn't have allowed the discussion, but I think we needed to have it.
I guess I'd make a motion to revert back to an enforcement-based policy. Complaint-based policies. Thanks, Councillor Burgess. Going forward, and we close the files currently opened up by Stantec, and we receive, I guess, once or twice a year staff reports on the complaints we're receiving, types of complaints, and how we should move on that going forward.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Burgess, any discussion on the motion that is now on the floor? Councillor Cadell.
Concerns with just closing out the files. We know of them, to just close them out concerns me. And if we were to suspend them, because then we could reopen them, it may just be semantics, but for me, that's important. There's some other things that I'll just pause on for a second as I collect them.
Okay,
I'd call that a friendly amendment.
okay. And Councillor Burgess, do you agree? Yes, okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Burgess.
Thanks, Mayor Sean. It's just clarity. So the complaint thing you said 1 or 2 times, you want to clarify 2 times a year? If that's good. And
Ms. Freeze, was that a once a year? Or I want to speak? Okay.
if you want to do what, it's
Okay.
fine. And then just clarity on the suspend. So basically all files that are actively involved or actively being looked at are just gonna be left as is till the complaint is made, and there'll be no further enforcement on anything other than what has had a resident complaint.
Ms. Freeze?
I would say yes, unless something under the building code or fire code causes us to have to act sooner. And I would take that advice from the fire chief or the chief building official if they felt there was a health and safety concern. Otherwise, we would not do any enforcement.
Councillor Burgess?
Just trying to understand what that means for a lot of the Mennonite shops. So if some of them aren't falling under the correct zoning and maybe we're not the commercial, what does that look like?
And through you, Madam Mayor, I don't have a great answer for that. I think it basically, if I got the advice from the chief building official or the fire chief that this was unsafe and that we should do enforcement on it, then I would take that to continue enforcement. But without that advice, then I would say it's just a zoning issue. We would not continue with compliance unless we got a complaint.
So it'd be referred to the building department or fire.
Yeah.
Mr. Brenneman, or
The way through you, Madam Mayor, to council, the way I understand what Director Freese is saying is that you're specifically trying to provide direction tonight with respect to the planning side of things. If we ever get a complaint that there's an issue that the fire chief needs to address under the fire code, or the building official, chief building official needs to address under the building code, we cannot direct them to not enforce, you know, the legislation that they're required to do, because they're provincial officers. So I think you're really making a decision tonight from everything that I've listened to and heard, or looking to make a decision potentially on going back to reactionary enforcement versus active enforcement. That's I think the direction that you're debating and discussing.
Ms. Freeze. Sorry, Councillor Grant, I'll get to you.
Yes, I agree. I guess my recommendation to council is that if we are aware of a health and safety issue on specific properties, that we should still continue with them if there's a building code or fire code issue outside of a complaint. We're not going to go out there just if we are aware.
Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, through Mayor Shantz. Yeah, so if you have become aware of these through the enforcement process, you'll still proceed with enforcing that due to a health and safety concern. But the enforcement will only be to get the building within safety, not through cost of zoning and all that kind of extra stuff. It's simply a health and safety, make the extra trusses or strapping or whatever is needed.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Not from the zoning perspective, only from the health and safety perspective.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to this council. I appreciate the desire to suspend. I think I think this is what we're grappling with is what does suspending necessarily mean when it comes to each individual case, which I don't know if we'll be able to answer when it comes to how much information you've taken from each resident. As I asked earlier, some of these cases, we don't even know what the state of the building is or what the state of the operation is and how it relates to a health and safety or fire code risk, which is where my concern is kind of coming from, is we're allowing operations to continue running when there may be a very real health and safety issue. And if we allow that to continue growing in size, which I feel is just inconsistent when we look at the entirety of the township. So again, I would stress that why I appreciate Councillor Kudo's desire to maybe not just scrap what we have, but to suspend it and try and find a workable solution there. I think the suspension itself is also perpetuating that lack of consistency and that lack of fairness across the board as well. So I just really struggle with not taking action at this late in the game.
Okay. Councillor Schwinn.
Health safety aspect. If we know of something, we should move forward on that. I'll argue, what about our houses and towns that deck railings aren't up to code? Are we going out looking for that, or fireplaces that don't meet code? We're picking on farm businesses here where there may be bigger health and safety concerns in residences. So why are we picking on one aspect of our community? Not a perfect answer, but I'm trying to give perspective from my point of view.
Okay, I don't see any further discussion. I'll call the question. Is everyone clear on what the motion is? Jen?
Mayor Shantz, I have that council, considering the agricultural enforcement update report, the council directs staff to revert back to a complaint-based process, enforcement process, suspend files currently open by Stantec. Suspend zoning files currently open by Stantec, and report back to council yearly on the nature of zoning complaints. Did I get that correct?
Can I just add one more hiccup?
Why not?
If we're gonna suspend them, can we have a staff report come forward with our first report on number of complaints that gives us an opportunity to revisit these suspended cases?
Ms. Freeze, is that?
So my understanding is that at the 1 year mark, when we are recording however many enforcement complaints come forward, we also write a report to go along with that. Yes. we could do that.
Concerns?
On the motion, Councillor Cadell.
Let's just do a recorded vote.
Oh boy. I've been managing the meeting, not thinking. In favor.
Oh,
You
Just-
looked at me. as though
sorry, I
was
was just waiting for you to ask me to
Oh,
administer the recorded vote.
yes.
But since you started, Mayor Sean,
In favor.
Councillor Grant,
Opposed.
Councillor Cadeau,
Opposed?
Councillor Bryant,
In favor.
Councillor Schwint,
In favor.
and Councillor Burgess.
In favor.
Mayor Shantz, that vote or that motion passes with 4 votes in favor and 2 votes opposed.
Council, there's been a request, since we have, brought Hart from Overlap here to talk about the strategic plan, that we adjust the agenda to move to that piece. And then we'll come back to the Breslau secondary plan after that. Everybody okay with that? Okay, then yes, we will move on. Thank you. We'll move on to 10.1 then, community strategic plan, and I'm on CAO.
Join us at the mic. I just wanted to, I just wanted to start off by thanking Brock and his team at Overlap. Certainly, this was the first time as a township that we've used the services of a strategic plan facilitator. And I think, we saw one of the key benefits of that was the ability not only internally to be able to have a facilitator engage council, engage senior management and our team here, but also the opportunity that it afforded us to really do a good outlying strategic plan engagement with the community, consultation, et cetera. And certainly I know Rayanne Bauman and I, benefited from working in a team with Overlap and having, again, that very important facilitation that is oh so key towards drawing out, again, when we look at the next 10 years, what, is council looking for? What's staff looking for? What's the community looking for? To make sure that we're all aligning on the key areas of focus and the priorities as we drive forward. But Brock, I am putting you on the spot. I didn't know if, as our lead consultant, whether you wanted to have any remarks yourself about the process before I just really give a final introduction for council before the consideration.
Sure, happy to. Nice to see everyone again as well. Yeah, I mean, I love doing community strategic. I think they are challenging in a different kind of way because you have so many different perspectives. And, as evidenced by even council and the decision-making that you have to make. But I love thriving together. I love this plan. And I think that what we've heard from the community and the themes that you see in this plan are, I hope, feel really balanced and I hope feel exciting and feel like a really strong path forward. Again, I think using community engagement as a way to understand what is important and what should show up in a plan is a really great way to produce these. And I hope that council sees themselves in this plan. I hope staff see themselves in this plan, and I hope the community sees themselves in this plan. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Brock. So through you, Madam Mayor, to council, I know one of our last meetings, I walked through the latest draft, but working with Rayanne this evening, I wanted to be able to present really in a pictorial way some of the images and some of the words I think that are really important further to what Brock just mentioned. So what you have displayed on the screen is the words thriving together, a blueprint for sustainable community growth. So we've always been known as a township for doing sustainable managed growth. But I think what's really important, and hopefully what you've seen in some of the words and the messaging that falls within the strategic plan, is what's also so important when we're managing that sustainable growth is how we create real community building, real community connections. At the end of the day, we can do our best job in terms of having great official plans, great secondary plans, great fire master plans, great recreation master plans. But at the end of the day, if we don't create the right environment where we're going to have thriving community, where people feel like they can see themselves, they flourish, they thrive, etc., then we haven't been successful. And so, I think that's one of the things that comes out strong here. Next slide. Thanks, Ray. So we tweaked the mission, as I said the last time we met, and tried to simplify it because the last one was even longer than this. But in short, what are we doing? What is our reason d'etre, so to speak? Woolwich Township is committed to providing exceptional public service. That's what we're in the business of doing, providing exceptional customer service, public service. We strive to offer customer service that surpasses expectations, promotes community connection, maintains sound financial management, and ensures ultimately long-term community health and prosperity. So at the end of the day, a mission is about why we exist, the foundation of why we exist, and that is to serve the public, provide exceptional customer service, and it's through community connections, sound financial management, and long-term community health and prosperity. In terms of looking at our vision, and just for the public at home, we have long developed a multi-year, 10-year strategic plan, not just one tied to the term of council. In the end, what is the vision for the next 10 years? We want to create conditions for communities to thrive. Woolwich has long been known as a community of communities. So at the end of the day, it's not just about any one community and developing the conditions for, it's how we create to do that. We will provide services and amenities to create an environment where Woolwich communities can flourish. We recognize that access to affordable housing is the foundation of healthy community. As Woolwich expands, we will endeavor to include affordable development so that all community members can access affordable housing. We will also develop and enhance the downtown cores of our communities to facilitate community connections and foster economic vibrance. We will, we will intensify existing community connections by building new public spaces, expanding recreation opportunities, and developing transportation corridors that promote active transportation and interconnectivity, leading to more integrated communities. So as you can see, even from the words on the first title page, we're trying to remember, I think, ultimately our foundational roots, which is on solid, good planning for growth and the development of our communities. But we're only going to do that if we make the right efforts in the area of affordable housing, downtown cores, public spaces, et cetera, to create those solid community connections. I'm not going to read, all of the key results here, but for council, as we talked previously at one of the last meetings, this is ultimately the areas that we wish to focus our attention on. And again, I want to remember, as I said last time, we know that there's only 2 years or 2.5 years left in this council term. So ultimately, we're going to have to work with council through the implementation of our annual business plans, to identify of these key results, what are the areas that need to be focused in on in this term of council, and ultimately what are brought, the remaining future attorney 34. One of the things, that we wanted to make sure of, again, to emphasize that we do have a strong commitment to community connection, is to emphasize that we're going to use not the live, work, play model, but what's becoming much more commonplace, the play, live, work model to guide Woolwich's expansion and ensure that every resident has an opportunity to live a vibrant and fulfilling life. We need to continually ask ourselves, how can we use our services, our infrastructure, our facility and our facilities to facilitate social connections that reinforce and expand community ties so that each resident feels like they belong. Woolwich will be more than a place to live and work. It will be a flourishing example of what can be truly achieved when prioritizing building for community connections. And again, right back to the very first title page, this is about making sure we remember at the end of the day, everything that we do in the spirit of public service and community service and community building is about ultimately creating thriving communities. And we do that through creating communities that feel connected, like they belong, and feel a vibrancy in this. Council last time very clearly said you wanted to see the values in such a way that there's not one particular value that's more important over the other. We're not going to have silos. It's going to be the combined sub efforts. And they will create the foundation of our actions and decisions. They will guide our efforts and define how we plan Woolwich's development and our interaction with our residents. And we're going to embed these values in every aspect of organizational culture that is aligned with our main mission and vision. So again, we developed wording here to emphasize no one priority over the other. These are the things we need to consider as we're making decisions at this table, as we're bringing reports forward. Values of fiscal sustainability, transparency, accountability, community engagement and making a priority, inclusivity, plan development, which has been our hallmark for many years, and ultimately environmentalism and sustainability, which includes, the importance of agricultural protection and safeguarding our natural resources. So these will be the foundational values that will guide our future decision-making.
I'd like to allow Brock the opportunity to sit down if he'd like to.
Sounds good. So then when we look at a number of the strategic priority areas, just at a glance, the 4 key areas outside of the vision statement are: we're looking to cultivate long-term prosperity for our communities. We're looking to empower communities to be adaptable and engaged. We're looking to provide effective and open leadership. And we're looking to maintain an innovative customer service focus, again, to keep that lens on public service. And how are we going to do that? Well, with the key results, we're going to do that in terms of the areas that are highlighted there in terms of the projects. And again, as I said earlier, focusing on these areas, these won't all be accomplished in the next 2 years. These will be accomplished over the next year timeframe. Next. So we're going to empower communities to be adaptable and engaged. What does that mean? We're going to expand tools and avenues for conversation to bolster a feeling of inclusivity and also community engagement. We are committed to developing EDI plans and policies to ensure that our communities feel safe and inclusive, and that's for all residents. And by employing a program shift to activate community spaces, we're going to encourage community integration and diversity. As we continue down this path, it will be essential to improve collaborations with stakeholders and consult all community voices as Woolwich continues to expand. We will intentionally seek feedback by providing Woolwich residents with opportunities to share their thoughts on municipal initiatives and assess participation rates to better understand how we can remove barriers and maximize citizen involvement so that every Woolwich resident feels like they have the opportunity to feel like their voice has been heard. Next. So again, just don't mean to gloss over, but I don't want to be, covering everything off, but the key results that we've talked about at a previous meeting are being driven by those areas. What do the people need to know what is meant by providing effective and open leadership? We're going to guide, we will guide with transparency and empathy, fostering a culture of trust and collaboration. We will fortify internal structures and processes that prioritize accountability and transparency to build community members' trust in governance. Foundational to this trust will be the development of two-way communication that will promote collaboration, eliminate silos, and build a culture of creative, understand community needs and build collaborations with public, private, and government entities to meet those needs. We know that leadership involves committing to creating an environment where staff can flourish in addition to supporting community members. And we will strive to become the employer of choice by providing professional growth and leadership opportunities and ensuring that we have the right people and the right seats to propel Woolwich Township forward. And those are the key results that will help us to achieve that. We're also going to maintain an innovative customer service focus. We will be customer service centric in all that we do and continue to push ourselves to find new innovative ways to serve the public. We will pursue innovation by leveraging technology appropriately and maintaining a clear delineation of services so that we in turn can provide services and programs that meet and exceed our community's expectations. We will also honor the efforts and goals of our community members by supporting volunteer-driven initiatives that address local needs and build solid social connections. And those will be the key results to do that. And with that, Madam Mayor, I would just like to thank Council for their engagement on this project. And I'm very excited, as I said, I think this has been the best process that I've had the pleasure of being involved in as we've developed both brand new strategic plans in my time here in Woolwich and also strategic plan updates. And I would just again remind Council, outside of the business plan implementation, we need to remember that this is not a static document. Strategic plans also ultimately need to be flexible. We need to engage future councils in reviewing the strategic plan because, I think a lot of municipalities would have commented that as a result of COVID, emerged regarding many other types of societal issues that emerged. Again, you need to be nimble and flexible and adaptable to be able to deal with those changing times. So not unlike the official plan, there can be amendments. You can flex this document to recognize new realities and challenges that exist. And I think the last thing I would say is the one thing that councils and staff always have to be prepared for is once we adopt a strategic plan with all of the words that come with it, we have to be very much prepared to not just implement it, but ultimately to stay committed to it and stay focused on it, because you will, over the course of the term of your council and over the next 10 years, many councils and staff will hear at that podium where a lot of the strategic plan words will come back at us if the community doesn't feel like we're living up to the commitments that we aspire to. So again, I'd like to thank Brock. I'd like to thank Rayanne. Rayanne has been incredible in terms of providing support on this project as always, and also council and senior staff. And as I said, most importantly, the community that came out to help make this a well-rounded document. So.
Great. Thank you for that. I really like the way this is put together. I like the wording. I find it very easy to read and is one of the sort of, I think, more user-friendly strategic plans that I've seen. So thank you for that. Are there any questions? Councillor Kiddo.
Can Brock get back? It's just a very brief question. Strategic planning is one of your favorite things to do, and I'm just wondering if you could enlighten us as to, what was unique about Woolwich's plan based on, you know, some of the other plans that you may have gone through. Is there anything that you could highlight for us?
I think the emphasis on like this idea of, to me, this really reads about belonging. And I think there is something like you don't see that always. And you don't always see that in community plans and in community strategies. And I think that that emphasis on belonging and the idea that we are all trying to thrive, I mean, ultimately that's what we're trying to do. So I think that's nice that it's there. And I think that it is I think it's an inspiring idea and it's something to be proud of that it's in that document. I'm also quite pleased that you're doing a 10-year plan. I think that makes sense in a municipal context. A lot of municipalities where we are doing work, they like to tie the strategy to the term of council. And I just think that city building is slow, community building is slow. And so communities, like you need to give time for things to actually happen. And I think the 10-year horizon on it is the right way to go for municipalities. And so I'm pleased that you folks did that.
Thanks very much for that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Schwint.
Yeah, just curious, we've had the engagement sessions with community last winter, I guess it was. Since we developed the finalized document, have we had any comments from the community? Comments at all with regards to the plan?
Mr. Brown.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, any of the comments that did come back from the community with the last round were incorporated in the last document. There was feedback, around, certainly improving the language around environmental and sustainability. There also was, comments about something was missing regarding arts, culture, libraries, that sort of area. The need to make sure that also that we are building, we can talk about environmental and sustainability, but we need to maybe make sure we mention our hallmark roots here, which is around agriculture and the rural areas. We can't forget our roots. As we certainly develop more and more in Elmira and Breslau and urban nature, we still have the hallmark roots regarding agriculture. Certainly we've been discussing tonight the importance of how we manage that. So those are the sorts of things, but nothing major or significant to say that we were off base. Just ways in which we can improve the language, improve the directions in which we've developed the document. Really, that was the feedback.
There is a recommendation that we approve the strategic plan. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Cadell. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you for your help in putting this together. It'll be a good document for the next 10 years. Thanks. Okay, we're going to move back to 9.1. The Breslau secondary plan. Mr. Vink.
Thank you, Council. I'm going to take you through another brief-ish presentation. I heard that, David.
First.
That's up to the mayor. I know. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Breslau, as you are aware, we've been working through the Breslau process, kind of stop and start with the provinces putting us back and forth in terms of boundaries, but we're back onto things. We had a public open house last week, demonstrating some of the information we're going through tonight. So we thought it was a good opportunity to come back to council, tell us where things are, so we can tell you where things are at the moment, get some feedback as we move through the summer to kind of wrap things up into the rest of the official plan. So the creation of Breslau framework for our future, doing the land use plan into the official plan with the policies. So some of the key things obviously are the boundary changes, where the province gave us the boundaries all the way out to Shawn Station Road, the new Highway 7 to the north, and then Kossuth on the south, which is then, and the Grand River on the far west side. So large amount of land. Last year, June, we did 3 concepts to the community, got feedback, met with a number of people, some of the developers as well as residents, and got a lot of feedback from that to help us craft what we presented this just last week. So we're trying to create this long-term plan. The long-term plan that we're looking at goes beyond 2051. 2051 is the horizon for our official plan, consistent with the regional plan. And Breslau, with these larger boundaries, obviously has a lot more land than we need initially. That's why it's going beyond 2051. So ultimately, we're estimating at the minimum, there'll be about 30,000 people that will live in Breslau. It's likely to be higher. We're estimating probably in the end of the day, 45,000 people, as well as the employment area with about 9,000 jobs we're approximating. So that's the kind of long term. And like I said, beyond here, the 2070 something, give or take. So as part of the process, we had feedback from the community on the vision statement and the principles, which were revised and presented last week. We've modified some of the designations. We've introduced the concept of neighborhoods, nodes, as focal points. We've been looking at some of the active transportation connections, and that's a bit of an ongoing moving thing, as we'll talk about momentarily. We've been looking at densities and what to do with where the density should be going. We've been working with the growth rates. Again, that, as Dave mentioned, Woolwich is known for its strategic and slow and progressive growth in our communities at a controlled rate. So we're continuing with that with Breslau also. Our commercial hierarchy, identifying some gaps in the natural heritage policies that we'll have to address, and as noted, kind of touching on those transportation policies, which are going to be big. The actual land use plan is what we presented last week, is this general direction. This is the preferred based on everything we were seeing and hearing. Across the south end, obviously, we have the airport. In and around the airport, we are introducing what seems logical as employment lands. Some are heavier employment lands, which is the darker gray, and lighter employment lands, which is the slightly lighter gray, employment 1 or 2. So the lighter employment would be more, might have offices, but your smaller operations that aren't as incompatible with residential because they're closer to some of the residential uses. So we're trying to introduce that there in and around the airport, and that makes sense from a compatibility perspective because around the airport, noise issues are always a concern. As well, the region does want to encourage industrial uses that support the airport. Around the airport. The airport south of the proposed Ottawa Street extension. I'm not sure why my internet is not stable, but hey. It's trying to tell me something. The south of the proposed Ottawa Street connection, there is a little bit of residential, but we're proposing a block for recreational uses. This is potentially a spot we would see for the larger facility, recreational facility. And you're probably asking, why did we choose that location in green with the circle dot there? There was a few reasons we thought this would be a good location. Those are lower areas that were formerly a gravel pit, and there's large ponds there right now, but would be an area that could be graded out in some spots, and we could add a lot of trail network through there. It is also a wellhead protection area from a regional level, so we don't want to introduce a lot of other uses there. We prefer to protect those wellhead areas and those ponds and those source water areas. So it's recreational will be an opportunity to help protect that. In addition, it is a lower area, so it's harder to pump the sewage up to Fountain Street. So there might be an opportunity here just to not have to put a lot of infrastructure in that area that we don't need, or if we don't need to. This opportunity also given next to the Grand River, we thought is an opportunity. The Grand being connected to our Indigenous communities as a key area, then we could tie it to the Grand River and preserve and protect areas around the Grand. In terms of location, it would be off of the proposed Ottawa Street, which would give it an access point for traffic to get to, and potentially sharing services if need be, or thoughts if we were to share something with the city of Kitchener in any form or fashion with their edge of Kitchener. Alternatively, the other choice would have been to do something further up along Highway 7 potentially, which is also another major road for connections for the community. But we figured this one checked more boxes. The proposed Ottawa Street extension, also known as, will take place. We have a lot of environmental features in there too, so we're working around those environmental features. So trying to introduce this area just as the residential, as basically the yellow. Ooh, I didn't want to do that. That's what happens when you move your cursor. So the yellow areas with some green in them. So there's a lot of the existing area, but introduction of new areas for residential growth. And that's the opportunity where you're going to see that residential area to take place. Within those, you're seeing a lot of those nodes. So what's the goal here around nodes? Part of the ties to the 15-minute community as per the regional official plan, somewhere that people can walk to from their neighborhood. And this will be an area where we would encourage small neighborhood commercial uses, your coffee shop, maybe a small pharmacy, small convenience store. We would encourage parkland in those locations. Anything along those lines where community can get together and regularly come together. And that way you get to see your neighbors in a central location or just walk by and get to be there. Even schools, elementary schools will be directed to those areas. So we start to create a community hub in those areas that people will get to know each other in their neighborhood and encourage community in that sense. And they can walk to it within the 15 minutes. Obviously in a 15-minute community, not everybody's going to get everywhere in 15 minutes. So 15 minutes walking is what we're showing. Ultimately, if you get into your vehicle, you should be able to get to our downtown in 15 minutes, or cycle potentially even there. So we'll get into the transportation network shortly, but the next element here is you'll see the darker oranges. Those are our higher, slightly higher densities. Most of those are along our busier roadways, which being Victoria Street, as well as in and around the area of the rail line and the GO station locations. This is the center of things changing on us. Right, recently, Thomasfield GO site that was originally proposed and originally supposed to be developed. The GO station site further to the west is the one that the region has recently introduced last week, that they have acquired those lands and are looking at those for the future GO. The reason we showed both of them is because a lot of the community didn't know this was taking place, and we want to identify that that was transitioning, that was potential happening, so they're aware of this, and to aware that that change is going to be potentially taking place, and where those location was that the region had acquired lands. In the site with the regional lands, we are proposing that next to it would be some form of mixed use. Mixed use would encourage commercial a bit for servicing those people that are going to the GO station. So again, maybe a small coffee shop or convenience store that they don't have to drive all over the place to go find some of these uses, as well as residential to go with potentially around that. That higher density helps to support these transit stations. So that's like the big cities, they're putting higher density around these larger stations. And that would be the goal here in and around the tracks, that people would have good access to that GO station in the future. The larger red, as you see, still along the Fountain Street extension, as well as the Woolwich Street, would be our core area. The area to the top, like I said, along just north of Victoria Street along the Fountain Street extension would be kind of the area where we would be looking for larger boxed stores, like hardware stores or grocery stores, to encourage those up there, because they're a nice open area that they can redevelop. So that's what we'll be encouraging and protecting up there, is the bigger footprints. And then the existing core kind of going down Woolwich Street would be preserved. Why? There's already a bit of a core there today. So it was the challenge to redirect a core somewhere else. Also, the growth is probably going to continue to happen in that easterly portion. So we want to make sure that we have opportunity to encourage that retail right from the beginning. If I move the core further west, that would take longer term, and we wouldn't see that core to take place, and there would be opportunity for that retail in the nearer term of things. So that's why the focus is still trying to keep that core in that vicinity along that area. As well, we're on key roads there. So that's where people are coming and going. So it's easy for people to access both by walking, cycling, or driving. So those are the spots you're going to drive and go grab your vehicle, go grab your groceries type thing. So you don't go off onto a side street to go find your grocery store ever. You go down your main roads to find those. And easy access off the Highway 7 too, to encourage people to stop if they're looking to travel along. And the furthest to the west, just north of the Grand River, is a bit of the pink. And that's it's kind of disjointed from the rest of the community, obviously, but that's an area we'd be looking at service commercial. Again, it'll be off a highway, and there'll be service commercial along those lines to service the area, the broader area. So That's generally the land use plan and the function around it that we're looking at this point of time. The GO station, as I noted, has made a bit of a change for us from a transportation and mobility standpoint, which we haven't updated in our transportation looking plan. So as part of this, we're building the whole community, and there's layers of different things going on. So we have the layers of the environmental features that we have there that we're preserving and protecting, and there's buffers around those. And in those buffers, we often introduce active transportation networks. So that's what you're starting to see around these greenfield, larger, darker green sections. You will see these dashed lines. That's for active transportation for trails, whether it's cycling, walking. We suggest that those be trail networks in and around there that we could introduce around them. That would allow people to circumvent or go around the roads, but maybe get even somewhere faster because the trails are even give you better route access. And most of those are directed into the residential areas. Obviously, the airport does cause us a challenge. We can't go through it very well with anything else. So not a lot of crisscrossing around the airport area. In terms of transportation, obviously you're seeing the proposed Ottawa Street extension shown. We're showing that as a potential future regional road. We are looking at that regardless, basically from a transportation perspective, from the Grand River over to Fountain, probably as some form of high order transit in the longer term. So what that looks like from a regional perspective, we'll find out someday, but it'll be a higher order transit, whether it's bus, ion, or something extending over towards Fountain and Ottawa Street. This would then give access towards the airport and then towards the GO to the north, which we'll identify a bit too. The other road networks are introduced. We did a bit of a mobility plan. So we're trying to still maintain some key north-south. They're not straight because we got to go around these environmental features. So north-south connect lines and some east-west lines to interconnect. So there's some broader line networks there. Those networks interconnect with the nodes. And because when they interconnect with the nodes, it gives opportunity for GRT to flow through those, obviously with bus routes in the future too, if they need to. So we could have transit go through them and hit the nodes to pick people up and connect with people. And you could travel between nodes. So this just kind of highlights a bit more of the active transportation and the road networks a little bit, what we're thinking might lay out in the future. Lots of trail potentials along the Grand River too, and connecting there. That hub, that purple dot, at Fountain and Menno, like I said, would allow for potential transit hub in there near the airport that would set direct things also to the airport and connect people there, as well as up to the GO. So that transit hub would use Ottawa Street, go up toward transit line through of high order transit, but like dedicated bus routes or ion to run in there and connect, because we're trying to move people in between, right? The GO station is a commuter station, just recognizing that it is not just a local station. So there'd be anticipating that there'd be lots of parking spaces in there. So we're trying to also have people move through that and get to and from it quickly, whether by their own vehicles or by transit, et cetera, to that space, that location. Tied to all this, we've been working with some servicing and working through servicing plans. They're just starting the EA process for that online. So the environmental assessment, they're reviewing a number of routes for the trunk of the sanitary line. The sanitary line will come up from Cambridge to the south at Fountain Street and up to Kossuth. And we're going to take that up right now. It's proposed to come up along Fountain, jog along Jetliner Court, turning to the right, cut across, go up towards Conestoga Meats, and then kind of weave through up towards Victoria Street, towards the west, east, I mean. So that will be the trunk. There will be obviously lines connected off the trunk. So using that as a basis for growth, because we can direct a lot of sewage to the south, that kind of started to lay out basically our staging plan of what's going to come first, second, and third for staging growth. Also, the other sanitary, there's a portion of sanitary that can go to the Victoria Street pumping station. That's where things are going today for the most part. So the existing Breslau, Empire, Thomasfield lands, those are all directed to the current Victoria Street pumping station. As well as Mad West is supposed to initially go to the Victoria Street pumping station. It will be converted and eventually go to the south. So we take servicing to the south and give more growth to the north towards the Victoria Street where they need to connect. They have to connect to Victoria Street. There's no choice. So area 3, for example, is Victoria, has to go to Victoria Street pumping station. So those are the lands up in around our retail area. We want to make sure we leave capacity for that. So that'll be one of the earlier stages because there's already servicing in that vicinity. So it'll be coming in along the same lines, same time as areas 2A and 2B. 2A and 2B as areas where we've identified commercial and residential kind of coming at the same time because they overlap in those areas. The rest of the areas of C, D, and B, C, and D, those are industrial lands, and they'll come on as need be, but can be serviced through connections going along along Kossuth and Sean Station, or through Lonsdale, as we call it today, just south of Conestoga Meets. In terms of the residential, obviously, we will be first because the line's coming up towards Fountain, going across Jetliner Court to Conestoga Meets, which is Lonsdale and Menno. We can service areas 2A and 2B sooner. And that's where we would direct the growth then to take place initially. That's where we're going to see probably the vast majority of growth between areas 2A, 2B, and 3 in the shorter term by 2051. Areas 4, 5, and 6, obviously, as the trunk line has to move further north and east, will come on later. So this will refine a little bit because we just got the trunk line recently. So this might refine a little bit between areas 4, 5, and 6, but obviously they will come later in the process. So we're not going to likely see these before 2051, but we know what the lands are, where they are, and we have a plan for them. And we know when they can come on stream if need be. So if the province was to change our staging model or tell us we have to take more and more growth, we could adapt and we could pull the rating. The sanitary line will be at Conestoga Meets around 2027, which means we could continue to move north and east with that trunk line and service other areas as need be for the residential side. Obviously, like I said, the commercial and the industrial side on the south end, we could easily tie in and move forward as need be too. So we've laid that all out with water and sanitary we're working on. So there is a larger infrastructure plan, and this all ties together and working together as we move this whole plan forward. So this is what we kind of presented to the community last week. This is where we're sitting with everything at the moment and getting feedback from the community. And just like I said, things are slightly changing as it deals with Go Station. So we're changing things up a little bit to address transportation networks there. But over the next few months, we'll be wrapping this up. From that perspective, coming up, crafting the finalized plan to present to council with the rest of the official plan this fall on the policies this fall. And council will have, the community will have a chance to see those in the fall. And then later this year, council will be dealing with the whole official plan. So this is the basis. We wanted to bring you up to date where things are. Obviously, nothing is necessarily written in stone. And that's where we're saying, bringing it forward tonight too, is just that council say, hey, we are looking for input. We are looking for feedback. So whether you have feedback tonight for us or you want to get back feedback to us separately for the month of July, we've put out to the community too. We'll be expecting them feedback after our open house. So any feedback people want to give and provide from that, that's great. I can just give a highlight from the open house night. We've had at least 50 people sign in, which is a pretty good amount of people. Between the hours of 4 and 7, I don't think the room stopped. It was at least 15 to 20 people in that room at all times. And we didn't stop talking. They're going to take a break. So lots of community engagement, lots of people coming out and interested and just encouraged by a lot of things, a lot of good feedback, a lot of people liking the plan so far. And they're giving us bits of pieces of feedback now that we're starting to see it now that they're take a look at it. Everything is also online for people to look at. So we encourage people to go online to our Breslau Engage page and to take a look there because all the boards that were posted last week are on the Engage page for consultation too. With that, I would say if council has any feedback, thoughts right now, we're willing to take it. If not, feel free to share it with us over the coming weeks.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you.
By the way, thank you, Jeremy.
I want to thank you for the work on this. I was at the open house last week from 4 till 7. There were a lot of developers there, I will say that, because I saw Thomasfield, Madison, and I don't know who else was there, but there was a bunch of them there. Anyway, there were questions from the public. Are we going to have another open house? Because a number of people couldn't come because of high school graduations, public school graduations, and previous commitments, and they were asking, is there going to be another opportunity for them to come out and see all this and speak to people in person?
So through the chair, excellent question. Obviously, we're into summer.
Right.
So having an open house at this time of year is not productive because people are always on holidays. So that we pushed, because of the timing from the province, we were able to get one in June still, and that was our last chance before the summer. So we're not proposing anything new this summer to happen. As I mentioned in the fall, we're going to open up, this will feed back into the full official plan. So people will have a chance to look at it through the full official plan, all the policies, all the mapping. They will have a chance to see that through that process, not necessarily an independent Breslau process at this point. It'll be fed with staff and the consultants in the fall on the full official plan still. So before we get to council with the final recommendation.
Thank you. So when they do that, they'll have the opportunity to still put in their feedback in the fall and
Yes.
potentially have those incorporated into the final plan?
Yes, so as I said, nothing's written in stone yet because we're still going through the process. So the policies are going to come out and draft for the first time this fall.
Okay.
So those types of things the public is going to see for the first time in the fall, as well as the consultants and everyone else. So there is time for feedback in giving us information and consultation. As well as staff have made it very clear, the Breslau process has been a staff-led process. So staff is willing, if people have any questions, to email, call. We're willing to engage with them at any point in time, because we even said it, because people did come out in the open house night.
Right.
And you walk away and go like, oh, what did he say? Or what, I have another question. We're always willing to take the phone call and to work with them and to answer any questions they have. Even coming forward, even if you did attend the open house. So they can do that over July if they want. And after looking at the stuff online, and even reach out to staff any which way they would like to, and we'll try and answer their questions.
Okay, sorry, and you said September, is that when you're looking to do this? I just want to clarify that.
At this point, we're looking at a September date to do the policies, yes, to
Okay.
bring forward the policies. Might be late September, we haven't determined the exact date, but policies are likely coming forward with everything September, that will be pushing it out with the official plan.
Okay, so they're back to school, so everybody will
Yes.
be back.
Yeah,
Okay.
everybody should be back, and that's a better time than to re-engage the community when people aren't gone and all over the place.
Thank you.
Councillor Schwint.
Curious on the industrial lands, political climate we're in. We are watching Wilmot and don't want to be in the microscope for that, but at the same time, we don't want to miss opportunities. Just wondering, industrial sized parcels in industrial lands, are we considered not maybe a mega site, but a major site? And, or could we be told at any one time that this is what's happening?
Through the chair, excellent question, because it actually came up in the open house too. The comment from the open house was, please don't tear up all the employment lands into small parcels. Make sure you say big parcels. So definitely we were looking at adding some policies in the official plan about somehow encouraging some larger parcels to be maintained. So especially more to the easterly side would make the most sense because they're larger farm parcels right now. We could continue to utilize them, keep them in larger parcels. The lands more to the west along Fountain Street, for example, are already smaller chopped up parcels that those could be then encouraged to be the smaller parcels and maintain those. So those are things we can look at about how we balance the lot fabric to make sure we provide opportunities for different types of employment in our employment area, for different types of opportunities that come forward over the time. So that's something we definitely want to look at, and how we might frame policy into place to protect that.
I'm going to follow up then. I know the region went ahead with a 700-acre parcel to have a mega site. At a smaller level, is that a township-led process? Is it township encouraged, provincially encouraged? How do we, I guess, have those parcels shovel ready for that small Toyota or next industrial plant?
So through the chair to Councillor Schwint. So in this case, this will be probably more of a township-led process. The nuance in this case is we have an airport. So the region is probably going to be actively in this area too, of finding ways to support airport related development in that vicinity too. So I think in some respects we're about moving parcels forward and getting some economic development support from them too. So I think it's going to be a bit of a balance that's going to take place between regional economic development, but the township taking the major lead on it for the most part about what it's going to look like and where we might be taking it. Obviously, we're going to be the ones extending most of the sanitary and services unless the region is going to put money to it. So we're going to be the ones kind of more leading and guiding growth.
I can tell you that there are a lot of sort of aeronautical type of businesses around the airport, and so that's a sort of growing organically, and I think that's a focus that that the region is looking at for that area is as much as we can do that. It sort of makes sense to have those businesses near the airport. Anyone else? Just in terms of going forward, so I understand the process. So this is the Breslau secondary plan. In the fall, you're going to work on the official plan. So could you maybe just clarify how those two fit together? Like, we're doing this now. Does it become part of the official plan? Or like, are you looking to have this sort of nailed down more before you move it in?
Definitely. So thank you, Madam Mayor, in that regard. So yes, although we're calling it the Breslau secondary plan, it will be brought into the official plan. It'll be part of the official plan. It won't be a separate standalone secondary plan. It'll be brought together with all the other policies. It'll be embedded in one of the chapters. So just from the structure of the official plan, because the process right now, the stockyards and Breslau. So Breslau is obviously one we're working on. Stockyards we completed a few years ago, and those policies are going to just be kept in place. So we're going to be putting in the policies and the plan into the official plan. It'll be just become part of the official plan, and it'll be the chapters and associated mapping in there like everything else. So just as Elmira has a map, St. Jacobs has a map and policies, Breslau will be in there too. So it'll be embedded in the plan ultimately.
Okay. And excuse me, I know that there have been a number of questions that have come up about the recent purchase, excuse me, of the property by the region, hoping for a GO station. And Ms. Fries, I wonder if you could just clarify for the public, I guess, what the process is going forward for that, how we sort of got there and where we're going.
Yes, I can do that. And we'll also provide some information on the engage page for the Breslau secondary plan to explain this to all of the public too, so they can have a little bit more detail and understanding exactly what's going on. So the region has purchased a property at the east side of Fountain Street, south of the rail. So this is one of the locations that was shown on Jeremy's map as a potential GO station, future GO station. So the region has strategically purchased this property, potential future GO station, and also an opportunity for a mixed use development with affordable housing. So the announcement has gone out from the region, and that announcement will also be linked to in this document that we'll put on our engage page for the Breslau secondary plan. The future development will be, they've identified this land as being a strategic land purchase and a potential site for GO, but there's still a full public process that will have to go along with that, as well as a EA process to identify if that is the most appropriate site for a future GO station. Breslau is also being planned for this particular site through the secondary plan that Jeremy had just gone through. And then also it deals with a number of other items that will be dealt with through the secondary plan, like the recreation facilities, commercial lands, and there's also a number of other studies that are going on at the same time to identify servicing, to identify the recreation master plan. There's an airport plan going on, and all of those will kind of feed together, and they'll identify these lands as well and the region's intent for the lands. So the the other point that I just want to point out, and this will be provided in the document as well, is that right now there's two separate sites that are identified as potential go sites. One of them is in the Thomasfield subdivision. The other one is this site that the region has bought for a potential go site. So regardless of what happens and which site ends up as the ultimate go site, the other properties and the go property will have a full public consultation process. So it is a full planning process to redesignate these lands, and there is a policy framework that will be part of the secondary plan and the official plan to protect those go sites for go opportunities as well. So I think that's it.
Thank you. I think that covered it. I know there were a number of questions that the community had asked after that announcement. So were there other pieces to that you wanted to cover, Dave?
Yeah, I think I can help through you, Madam Mayor, to count questions, back to the community, as we plan out Breslau and as we plan for growth to 2051, what are the realities of making sure, I think there's been general statements or questions around infrastructure. And if we interpret the broadest term infrastructure to mean not just roads and bridges, but recreation and other support services, et cetera, I think council needs to be aware, and we want the public to be aware that, ultimately, there's been questions around the fact that as we grow, how are we going to make sure that we're adequately policed? Well, that's not within our realm. However, we can certainly always work with and advocate for with the Police Services Board and our policing service, the Waterloo Regional Police, to ensure adequate staffing levels. And just for the public's benefit, in case it's not widely known, we're serviced in Woolwich out of two divisions, North Division and Central Division. North Division handles really Elmira, St. Jacobs, and more this part of the community of Woolwich. And the broader community of Breslau and surrounding area is serviced out of Central Division in Kitchener in terms of patrol and coverage. There also have been questions that have come from the community as we plan again for this growth to 2051. What about the state of our bylaw enforcement? The best way to respond to that right now is our current service levels are including 2 full-time officers, along with some students and some seasonal support staff. That is a service level which is reactionary in nature on a complaint basis. Any change in service levels as a result of growth would be something that we would have to discuss around this council table if there was the environments have a enforcement service. So we know those sorts of questions are around. And I think it's also important to let the Breslau community that know that we continue to engage on a regular basis, a very regular basis, with our rural community support agencies, Woolwich Community Health Center, Woolwich Counseling Services, Woolwich Community Services, and Community Care Concepts. It's not oblivious to us that we need to make sure that there's appropriate support services long-term for a growing community. And it's not lost on our community support agencies either. That is something that needs to be planned for the future. Deanne has I'll just emphasize, Deanne has also mentioned that, it's not just about the roads or bridges or pipes, et cetera. Those are all being planned for appropriately, but it's the recreation, it's the public spaces. And again, dare I say, tie back to the community strategic plan. We recognize that for all our communities, it's about the public spaces, it's the public facilities, it's about how we create community. Outside of that, I'm not sure, Deanne, you touched upon, there have been questions around, what are we doing, if anything, regarding making sure that there's retail opportunities, commercial, grocery stores, et cetera. And, I certainly can draw in my experience here in terms of my time in Brant and Southwest Paris, very much similarities in terms of the fact that as Paris grew, it took time for major retailers to do their business case analysis and to say that the population, the demographics, et cetera, and all of their business case analysis has reached a point to actually establish a grocery store or any commercial retail establishment. We do actively ourselves through economic development and planning. The comment to date has been, it's not at a size yet, it's not at a size. We also have heard some of that from developers that would have some of the employment lands available in the Breslau community. So again, we're not oblivious to these things. We are very much aware. And it's all part and parcel of how we develop and organically grow community and support that community over time. So we're aware. I think we're taking the necessary actions from a planning standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, from a recreation standpoint. We will work with our police service. You know, we will consider the future of bylaw enforcement. We will continue through our rural collaborative group to connect with our community support agencies to make sure that it, you know, even if it, you know, is a result of future needs regarding nurse practitioner space, things of that nature, that as Jeremy and Deanne have mentioned tonight, we need community wellness hubs. We need community spaces such as that. So we are aware, we are taking the actions, and we are laying the groundwork to do that effectively.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, so thank you for the presentation, and we look forward to more to come. Consent items. Does anyone want to move anything from the consent agenda? Would someone like to move the consent agenda? Councillor Schwint, Councillor Burgess, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We already did 10.1, so 10.2 is the official plan amendment number 7. Mr. Vink, you are up again. Oh, you're gonna switch.
I think you're sick of me by now, so.
Yeah, I have the real easy, simple one. So basically this OPA is just resolving some policy and mapping deferrals that were resolved as the result of the new regional official plan, ROPA 6, being adopted. So there's 4 different ones that are included in here. The first is the stockyard policies that were deferred to wait for the regional OP, which has now been adopted. There's Isabella Street policy and the mapping, which was deferred again for the ROP, which has now confirmed that these lands can be converted from employment to residential. Albert Street, which was again deferred for the ROP, and has now been confirmed that these lands can be converted from employment to core area. And the last one was the North Arthur Street, which has been also deferred to wait for the ROP, but has now been identified that it would not be able to be converted to employment, so that those policies will be removed from the official plan. So it's very simple housekeeping amendments, but now that ROPA 6 has been adopted, we can move forward with these deferrals that were in our OP.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, not seeing anyone. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Ms. Freeze, we'll have to let you do reports more often. Sorry, Jeremy. Okay, I guess that brings us to number 11, Mayor's Report on Regional Matters. I guess the only thing I had noted here from the region was the opening of the Breslau Library, and we've talked about that, so that's exciting news. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. Yeah, I'm just bringing forward this motion about some traffic congestion issues caused by Bollard Place adjacent to the intersection of Mockingbird Drive and Oriole Parkway. Some residents had reached out about this. This intersection is right beside Park Manor School and is the main crossing point of students leaving the school. Cars are parked where the Bollard is located, and then both cars from local residents and parents during pickup and drop off at the school. So this is backing up traffic, and cars are having to weave in and out of these parked cars trying to make it around the Bollard and then going into oncoming traffic lanes. this is creating congestion, a headache for drivers, and a danger for the students crossing the road here. So with this motion, I'm just hoping we can remove it to fix this issue while leaving the remaining bollards on Oriole Parkway to reduce speed. So given those above reasons, and also that council hasn't yet been given a report on Woolwich's traffic calming measures, I'm just hoping that we can vote now to listen to the residents' opinion for the neighborhood until we're get our report from staff. And yeah, I just want to bring this motion forward.
So that's a motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cadeau. Discussion? Councillor Cadeau, then Councillor Bryant.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to the rest of council, have any other concerns come forward with other bollards within our communities that anybody is aware of? Because I haven't heard of it. This is the one, okay. There is an addendum made to this motion that staff, because I know, Director of Infrastructure Services had said that there is a traffic calming report to be coming forward to council. So could we direct staff to have that come forward this calendar year, so that for next year in the spring, we have a really clear indication of what traffic calming measures are going to be in place across the township, so that we can, meet residents who may have concerns with that information, rather than just kind of shrugging, saying we really don't know where we're at. For me, I would be more than comfortable to support Councillor Burgess in this motion if we were to add that in and, give direction to staff that they shall bring that report back. 2024, I would be comfortable with something to that effect.
Mr. Brenneman or Carter, who wants to, is that a doable thing? Mr. Brenneman.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to council. My understanding from the Director of Infrastructure Services that, and I believe, in light of him not being here, he had put out an email communication. I believe it's his plan to bring that forward this fall. So that ask and that direction fits with, I believe, the timing of what Mr. Poupé has planned for him and his team to bring that forward.
And then just as one follow-up then, I'm cognizant of the precedent that we may be sending by removing a bollard, and I would just urge council to maybe not bring these concerns forward until such a time that we have that information and we can make informed decisions about any other bollards. So I would, maybe be jumping to an assumption here that any further complaints that would be coming forward, may be a result of any decision we may make here. So that is a reason that I would be hesitant to support this motion. So, having that report added into the motion to me kind of gives me that peace of mind, and ideally prevents us from having to sit around this table talking about a single bollard or something to that effect.
So is that a friendly amendment? Councillor Burgess, thumbs up. Okay. With that. Councillor Bryant did. Okay. Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Through you to the rest of council. I generally appreciate us wanting to address a traffic calming measure and where there's a clear issue. Fully disclosing that I don't know the full situation going on around Oriole Parkway. My one concern is I don't know if there's a need to necessarily vote on it tonight with school being closed. It seems like the issue is related to drop off and pickup of students during the school year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm wondering if we could maybe pause or wait to get that traffic calming measure or report back before we make a decision to remove a bollard, fully acknowledging that this does maybe set a precedent to make those types of calls.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, I appreciate we're in the summer right now. Two comments to that. one, the residents did have other complaints. The one guy who lives there does do a commercial type business that he has a trailer that he has to back up right basically over top of it, involved with it. The main issue and concern why this one is unique is the school zone. The reason I would say we should still move it right away is the resident did raise it in May, and then we tried to work through staff behind the scenes, and that didn't work. Then we tried to bring it to council, but there was rules around making a motion that had to be so far out to be on the agenda. So then it's delayed. We only meet so often. Now it's July. He's already waited 2 months. Let's not make him keep waiting. Let's just get this done. It's moved. It's ready to go for the fall. And it just addresses the issue now for him. Let's show we don't take 4 months to get something done.
Anything else? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, a motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 39-2024 to 44-2024, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal, and you can see them on your report there. I don't think we changed anything on there. Mover and seconder, Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Schwint. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you. And that, oh, no, and a bylaw. Sorry, just let me make sure that I go from one page to, okay, good. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Motion to adjourn to meet again in special session on July 16th, 2024. Councillor Bryant, Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor? In closing, council would like to thank all who participated, attended or tuned into the meeting tonight, and wish everyone watching a wonderful evening and a good summer.